Whoops. All right, well, I think we're going to go ahead and get started here. Thank you everyone for joining this evening. You are joining the Sustainability Through Citizen and Community Engagement panel, which is very exciting. One of the goals of our Common Cause conference this year, Beyond Sustainability, is to bring in different voices to share their perspectives on these issues. So it's really an honor to be able to moderate this panel this evening. I'm Dr. Alise Coen, Associate Professor of Political Science in the Public and Environmental Affairs Unit, and I have with me joining this conversation some incredible community organizers and leaders. So what I'm going to do is kind of give an opening context for what we're talking about tonight. If you've been tuning into some of our other events, you will have noticed that Beyond Sustainability is trying to move our frame of thinking beyond the line between humans and the environment. So instead of thinking of human life and environmental ecological life as separate, thinking about how they're interconnected, thinking about the ways that ecology rather than environment brings together different systems on our planet, and thinking about also the interconnectedness of social justice issues with these environmental and ecological themes. So I'm very excited because all of the organizations and institutions we have represented here this evening do that kind of work, that actually are in the business of working towards social justice, bridging different issues on ecology. Some things to keep in mind as you listen to them, and they will introduce themselves as we go, is sort of how we can see sustainability play out in the kinds of examples they share with you of the work that they are doing. One of the questions we have guiding our conference this year is, what do we want to sustain? What is something that's actually possible that we can hope to sustain, given really the impossibility at this point of the status quo that we're facing? So I am going to turn things over in accordance with your program to have each of our speakers give about 6 or 7 minutes of an overview of what their work is, what their role is, and how they see that role shaping this ecological sustainability, beyond sustainability sort of theme. We're going to start with Seth Hoffmeister. So I will turn things over to Seth.
Thank you so much for the introduction, and thanks for inviting me to participate in this panel this evening. I'm really excited to talk with you all about this theme. A little bit about myself. I'm Seth Hoffmeister. I'm a resident of Green Bay, lived here for about 5 years, grew up in Eau Claire, went to school at UW-Stevens Point, and I work for Wisconsin Conservation Voters, where I'm the organizing and political director. Get to do a lot of really great things with my job. Get to work with great folks like Casey and folks in the community like John, and also get to work statewide with lots of folks doing similar work as well. Big part of my job is the elections, and I'm really glad that that is all over and we can start focusing on some of the policy advocacy. When I moved to Green Bay 5 years ago, we knew climate change was a big deal, but we weren't seeing a lot of action at the state level with folks that were elected, and we weren't seeing a lot of action, a lot of meaningful action at the federal level. The first program that I organized around in 2015 and 2016 was Obama's Clean Power Plan, which was a very modest step in the right direction to try and address climate change. And we did what I think is the most effective thing to address any issue, and that's community organizing. A few years later, by 2017, we saw the federal government take a few steps back on climate change. The federal government pulled out of the Paris Climate Accord, and a lot of the folks in the community that we worked with, the group Joshua, and a lot of other really great organizations, indigenous tribal members and other activists, were all pretty bummed out. We'd been focusing a lot on some state level issues, on some federal issues to really just no avail. And instead of getting discouraged, we saw what other communities across the state and really across the country were doing. Cities like Madison or counties like Dane County, the city of Eau Claire, started to take matters into their own hands when it comes to addressing climate change and clean energy and climate resilience. We saw a number of communities use their local sustainability boards or commissions or committees to pass 100% clean energy resolutions, and then to really put the pedal to the metal in assembling local governments, power companies, businesses to try and figure out how to actually get there. And we realized that we could do that here in Green Bay. Rachel Westenberg she was an organizer with Joshua, and we had a really great environmental justice task force, and we went to one of our favorite alders in the city of Green Bay, Randy Scannell, to pitch an idea to create a sustainability commission so we could do not only that, but other things here dealing with clean water, invasive species, things like that. And by the end of 2018, the city of Green Bay created a sustainability commission. So in addition to working with Wisconsin Conservation Voters, I was very fortunate to be appointed to the Sustainability Commission, which started meeting in October of 2018. I was appointed our chair, which I've been serving as ever since, and I got to meet great folks like John Arndt, who also sits on the commission, and we'll be talking a little bit about some more of our work there. I think that when we talk about a big, huge global issue like climate change, it just seems like a lot to bite off. It just seems so overwhelming. But when we really break it down to our local impacts, we can really do a lot of great things. In just 2 years on our Sustainability Commission, we've been able to start to set some modest internal goals on hitting our own 100% clean energy by 2050 benchmarks, and also start to take seriously the impacts of climate change that we're already feeling. I live on the east side of Green Bay, and if you go just a couple blocks that way, you'll run into the East River, and a lot of my neighbors have been really devastated by flooding that. Even in my short time in Green Bay, 5 years has gotten worse and worse and worse. In the last year, the city worked with an organization to secure funding for a really unique position, a coordinator for city resilience, a full-time city staff person where we can take some of the matters of climate change, climate mitigation, and climate resilience seriously. In just a short time, we've seen a lot of really great things. One of the things that I'm most proud of our commission for doing is spearheading a green infrastructure code audit, where we're looking at all of the rules around and like technical aspects of where water goes when it rains, and we're able to come up with some plans to make sure that when the city does get more rain and continues to get more flooding, that it goes in the right place and not in our basements. And it's not displacing people of color, low income folks, folks that are already more marginalized who stand to really be hurt the most from climate change. On top of that, we have experts like John on our commission that are looking at some of the more technical energy use details. And as we go into the next year, we're really looking forward to figuring out how the city of Green Bay can make a transition to using 100% clean energy, having electric vehicles and other things like that. And it really seems to be something that's spreading and really quite an exciting movement, something that really gives me hope in an otherwise bleak year. I mentioned places like Madison, Dane County, City of Eau Claire have all made similar commitments and actually already have in place really robust plans to address climate change and clean energy and climate resilience. But we're seeing places like Milwaukee having a city and county task force that are not only talking about climate change, but equity and racial justice and those impacts and how we can have green jobs to save us from a really terrible COVID economy. We're seeing Milwaukee suburbs like Wauwatosa and West Allis and other places, places you might not expect to be climate leaders also pushing forward. We're seeing just so many other places, City of La Crosse County, tons of places that are really just moving the needle on climate change. And I guess since I mentioned a lot of my job is in elections and electoral politics, we saw climate change be a very decisive issue for a lot of voters, and a lot of voters in Wisconsin, for voters all across the political spectrum. As we head into a new year with unique challenges, I think that local government's ability to partner with the federal government and hopefully the state government, we can really address a really challenging issue like climate change and really help a lot of folks. So I know that Casey next is going to talk about some even more exciting things happening locally. So I think I'm probably to my time. So I will yield. Thank you.
Fabulous, Seth. Thank you so much. That was great. We're going to turn it over now to Casey Hicks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having myself on here to speak a little bit about what Wisconsin Conservation Voters is doing and what I'm doing specifically around sustainability and clean energy work in the northeastern part of the state, and kind of taking up the mantle that Seth started back in 2018. So to introduce myself, as he said, I'm Casey Hicks. I'm the Northeast organizer with Wisconsin Conservation Voters. I've been with them for 2 years now. I'm actually a UW Green Bay grad. I graduated in 2017 with my degree in political science and a minor in democracy and justice studies. And I found myself with WCV after about a year graduating. I was previously working for a different nonprofit as an AmeriCorps Vista and working on continuous improvement with local schools here in Brown County. Built up some relationships with people at Green Bay Area Public School District, which actually continued over into some of the work that I'm going to talk about in a little bit. But I actually think the entirety of my position and WCV's mission fits in really well with the theme of the entire series here. It really, Seth touched on it a little bit. But I mean, our mission is to engage voters to protect Wisconsin's environment. And that really doesn't happen unless we build a movement and we work on transformative types of organizing and making sure that we're bringing people into the fold that have typically been left out in the past, people of color, indigenous communities, folks who live on the fence line, so to speak, and who are facing climate change issues every single day. and are often affected disproportionately compared to the rest of us or to other folks. And so to kind of like touch on the theme, I guess, before I get into like the specifics of what we've been doing, I feel like all the work that we've been doing has been to build a sustainable and ecological future where people understand that they're a part of our larger environment and that they're a part of nature. And I mean, we do that every day basically through transformative organizing, kind of like I mentioned before. So training volunteers and engaging people on their values and bringing them into the fold and asking them to take action based on their values. And so we've been doing that a lot with clean energy locally, and Seth touched on the why behind the local clean energy campaigns. There's not a whole lot of movement happening at the divided state governments. The executive branch is doing some really great things, but the legislature didn't have any hearings for a single climate bill this past year. And so the federal government is probably going to be doing a lot more now that a new administration is coming in, but up until now hasn't really done a whole lot. So there's a lot of space and frankly influence that local governments can use to affect change at the state and federal levels. And so as we've been working on these clean energy campaigns here in Brown County, we've been trying to pass 100% clean energy resolution for about 2 years now. And then recently we passed one with Green Bay Area Public School District back in March of 2020. It feels like it was way longer ago. But both of those campaigns have been really rewarding, and I think a way for us to continue the momentum that we started with the city of Green Bay, and that UW Green Bay continued by making their own clean energy resolution and passing it with the student government. But to kind of get into some more of the specifics with Brown County, the way that it really first happened was a county supervisor approached us about 2 years ago after they saw what Green Bay did, and they were influenced by that campaign and wanted to emulate it at Brown County. And so they saw a lot of the other benefits that it could have as far as saving the county money on energy, saving that money for taxpayers, and then also saving and putting more money into services for citizens. So it was a win-win there. And then also being able to I guess, have influence over utilities and their own goals, because local governments are most often the largest ratepayers, take up the most energy in a lot of cases from utilities. And if they're making commitments to 100% clean energy and they're working towards that goal, net zero carbon emissions, that really does push utilities to be better along with state and local government, or state and federal government, like we talked about before. And there's also, of course, the potential to create jobs, especially now with COVID-19 and the crunch that folks are feeling right now who are out of work. There's a lot of potential to bring people into the fold with green jobs that are going to be, family sustaining, livable wage jobs. And so they saw a lot of those benefits. And then, of course, also cleaning up pollution and making sure that public health is being protected locally here. And from there, we just kind of figured out our goal, what we wanted to do. We were trying to figure out for a little while if we wanted to do a resolution, making a formal commitment, or setting up a commission similar to what Green Bay had done. And lo and behold, 2 years later, we kind of ended up going with both of those things. And the resolution that's currently before the county board right now would commit the county to 100% clean energy. It's not quite where we would want it to be. They don't have any target dates, such as reaching 100% clean energy and net zero carbon emissions by 2050, or preferably earlier, like most other local governments have set. But I think for this county, it is still been a pretty big lift, and something that I think they'll be hopefully proud of. There's a few other changes that we're trying to make as well that are a little bit problematic in the resolution, which mainly had to do with wind energy discouraging it within the county, and also incorrectly defining natural gas as clean energy, which is not necessarily a sustainable thing to do within the resolution. But anyway, so that's very close to being finished up as well. Going back to the Green Bay Area Public, it was kind of the same. It was kind of the same scenario where we were approached by a school board member who saw what Green Bay had done, felt like there would be a lot of benefit to the school district, and especially for students to get them involved and have them learn skills that they could carry forward into a future that is going to be more sustainable, and where we're going to be seeing clean energy used much, much more and more green jobs out there. So they felt like it'd be very beneficial for them, as well as, you know, again, saving money. And their resolution that they ended up passing is the most comprehensive one that a school district is passed in the state, and they're the third school district to do so. And just without getting too into the weeds, there are a few really notable things in the resolution that I was really proud that they passed with, particularly linking back climate change and wanting to go back to their health policy and insert the effects of climate on their health policy in the school, and then also setting up a specific capital fund where they could put savings and money towards future improvements, future clean energy infrastructure at schools. They even put in the goal of putting in a solar array on one of their new builds in 2021. So they did a lot of really exciting things, and things that I think are sustainable, that are going to build up not only the school district, but also prepare students for the future too.
Thank you so much, Casey. And now we're going to move on to Mary Faydash, and Mary is with the Friends of Black River Forest.
Hi there. One of the things that I have noticed since I've been listening to our participants is that we are at the very, very beginning of the process that you are all working so hard at, and moving along with accomplishments. Our issue is that we feel like for 6 years we have slogged through wet cement in trying to inform and educate the residents of Sheboygan County about the impacts of a proposed project, and that is a golf course project, which is proposed along the shore of Lake Michigan by the Kohler Company. And one of the reasons we're thrilled to be here, and my thanks to Dr. Volker, is that reaching out to you and other groups that are working so hard on sustainability hopefully will help us get the word out about our activism, because it's taken us many years to realize that we have to move beyond the county where we are to bring the issues of sustainability throughout the state of Wisconsin. You're the creative community and the educators. And so we're looking forward, and as we move on, we're looking forward to develop partnerships and coalitions with other groups. I know that I've talked to Casey before, and their group is a group that we follow and that we admire tremendously. We're challenging, we started out as a one-issue group. We're trying to protect and preserve a rare ecosystem along Lake Michigan. And the company, which is the Kohler Company, intends to clear cut over 160 acres that would destroy a migratory bird stopover. It would fill in rare and globally significant wetlands. It would dump thousands upon thousands of pounds of pesticides and fertilizer into a very shallow aquifer. And what we've been trying to do is educate the public on the more global impacts of that. The Sierra Club has joined us in a partnership on this issue. And I'd like to mention a couple of our victories. What we have been involved in is using Wisconsin law to hold the Department of Natural Resources and the Natural Resources Board to it, and to spread across the state the fact that we have got to put people in positions in towns, such as our town government, and cities, who have a broader understanding of, let's say, economic development than let's use the entire environment because we have to create jobs. So we're looking at trying to help with our informational services and our legal activism to help other grassroots groups realize that the struggle is to hold people, the businesses next door, to the same principles of Wisconsin law that everyone is held to. One of our significant victories was an administrative law judge revoking a wetland fill permit for the Kohler Company that was incomplete and had misinformation. And it was withheld. And just recently, the appellate court overturned 2 circuit court decisions against us when we said that Friends of the Black River Forest and users of state parks had a right to bring a suit. In other words, that we would be harmed by the Kohler Company having the land for having state park land, which the DNR gave them. Now, the appellate court overturned those 2 decisions and said and affirmed the right of Wisconsin residents to challenge a state agency, particularly regarding the environment. And we consider that a huge victory. And just a little background, we began around my dining room table because we were not getting information on this particular development project from our town. The negotiations were being kept secret. And so what happened was that we voted out the town chairman and voted out some supervisors and voted in a town administration that pledged to do thorough environmental study of any permits that were given. Another setback for us is that the Kohler Company circumvented our town and had the city of Sheboygan annex their land, Kohler's land, taking it out of our jurisdiction and giving it to the city of Sheboygan because they would avoid our environmental study. So I guess what I'd want to say about what we've learned is that, and what we're trying to bring to others, is that we have experienced incredible powerlessness, which I'm sure the other panelists have experienced when they started out. Powerlessness that no one would listen to us. The governor, of course, was pushing this particular project. And so I felt powerless as a woman, as a citizen concerned for the health and welfare of the residents around me. And I felt powerless because I had no ability to access the corridors of power where these decisions were being made. And the prime decision, of course, is to give, not only to destroy an ecosystem by skirting environmental permits, but for the DNR to give several acres of Kohler Andre State Park land to a company for its private profit. Prime state park land of ecological significance in exchange for scrubland. So this has now reached the Wisconsin Supreme Court for review. The Kohler Company and the DNR argue that, again, that we do not have standing to bring this case. So we think this is a very important thing to get out to the entire state. So I guess in conclusion, what I have also realized is we started out with a one-issue project, let's protect this rare ecosystem. And this has brought us into social justice, environmental justice, economic justice, and sustainability. And it has inspired all of our members, not just to work on this particular project, but to reach out to your organizations, not only for support, but to support you. Thanks.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Mary. And our final panelist, John Arndt, actually right here with us at UWGB Office of Sustainability and Environmental Management and Business Institute.
All right. Well, thank you, Alise. As Alise said, I'm the director of the Environmental Management and Business Institute here on the campus of UW Green Bay. And I'm also now the director of the newly formed Office of Sustainability. The campus as a whole is starting to focus even more heavily on sustainability. And in fact, I'm now on a committee for focusing on one of our campus strategic priorities, which is sustainability. I am both an alum of UWGB. I've got my undergraduate and master's degrees from this campus. And I've been a community member living and working here in the Green Bay, De Pere area for over 30 years. And I've been in northeastern Wisconsin all my life. So talking about what community outreach means for the Environmental Management and Business Institute and the Office of Sustainability, it takes a lot of forms. One of those forms, it can be pursuing grants and trying to help the community and work on community issues. We often bring faculty members in if we're looking at grants. Touching on something that Seth Hoffmeister had talked about, and in particular the East River flooding. I worked with a group of faculty members late summer to help submit a grant that targeted East River flooding and community resilience. So looking to see if we can help address that area, especially in the area of communication. So that's one area. We work on grants. I do present to local groups, talking to about what we do here at the Environmental Management Business Institute, and also on the importance of sustainability and looking for opportunities for our students to assist. I sit on several local committees and a board. One of those committees is the Brown County Lead Abatement Coalition. And our focus there primarily is educating community members on the hazards of lead and where lead is typically found. And what we tend to educate them on is lead is typically found in, or 80% of it is found in old lead-based paint. It's also found in lead water piping. I'm very happy to be part of this commission, and one of those members of the coalition is the Green Bay Water Utility, who has achieved removal of all the lead service lines that are city-owned over the last few years, so which is a great milestone. But the education really is focused more on the economically challenged members of our community, and they need to know the hazards that are out there and ways that maybe we can help them, inform them how to mitigate them, or at least point them in the direction of contractors that could help assist in mitigating and reducing the health damages of lead. Additionally, I've been on the Brown County Zero Waste Committee, where we looked at, in particular, the new Brown County waste landfill that's going up and going to be operational in southern Brown County. And looking at the beginning in the development of that landfill, are there ways that we can further take waste streams, divert them into maybe economically viable opportunities, and ultimately reduce the amount of waste that's going into the landfill. And then I also currently sit on the Steam Engine Green Bay board, and Steam Engine Green Bay helps share with the community folks that are working in science, technology, engineering, the arts, and math, in those areas, and topics associated with that. It takes a while to remember what STEAM stands for, but there are a lot of community members involved in these areas, and it's a great opportunity to share some of the things that they're doing. In addition to some of the committees that I'm sitting on, Seth mentioned that I do sit on the City of Green Bay Sustainability Commission. I've been there for a little over a year. And one of the areas that we are looking at relates to moving towards carbon neutrality by 2050. And part of that process of how do you get there is really what we're asking. And it begins with baselining the amount of energy that we use in our city buildings, and coming up with that number, and essentially that'll help give you a carbon footprint. But more importantly, once you know that baseline, now we can start moving towards sort of a climate action plan to move from where we are to get down to zero. So that's one of the things that we're working on with the Green Bay Sustainability Commission. I will tell you that I'm also, I've been talking to the city of De Pere, which is also interested in eventually reaching carbon neutrality. And I've been talking to a few of the members of their commission to see basically what are we doing with Green Bay, and how can they do similar things with the city of De Pere. So I'm very happy with that, it's spreading, which is great. One of the things the Environmental Management and Business Institute, as a institute here on the campus, UW Green Bay, does, we offer a certificate in sustainability. So we want to try to educate as many students as we can and give them that credential as they go out into the working world, regardless of where they're working, whether it be a for-profit or a nonprofit organization. And part of that certificate requires the student to have an experience or an internship in sustainability. And to date, we've had students have over 150 of these internship experiences with local businesses and nonprofits. We've worked with probably approximately 75 organizations. So not only are those organizations benefiting from our students coming in and helping them focus on sustainability, but it also gives our students real-world experience as they leave and graduate, and hopefully take that experience to the organizations that they're going to be working with, and help further move organizations towards sustainability. And lastly, one of the things I wanted to talk about is really as we're looking at outreach for the community. I'm working with the Continuing Education and Community Engagement Office here on the campus of UW Green Bay at offering a non-credit online certificate in sustainability for those members in our community that want to learn more about sustainability, or perhaps interested in helping their organization. So that is getting ready to be launched fairly soon. And hopefully we'll be able to grow the conversation about sustainability here in northeastern Wisconsin. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, John. So at this time, I want to encourage the audience to start putting any questions that you all have for our panelists tonight into the Q&A or the chat. Either is fine, and we'll try and get to those. In the meantime, while people are typing in their questions, I wanted to throw something out to the panelists that I see as a sort of connecting theme across what a lot of you are discussing in your work. feelings of powerlessness or feelings of needing the federal government because the state government is so divided. I think we're all hyper aware of the electoral politics in our state. And I was recently hearing some research about, maybe you've heard it too, something called solution aversion when it comes to issues of climate and environmental change, where part of the problem is not just convincing people with scientific data and information of the things you all are working on, and proving with the data, look, this is a real problem impacting us, but a psychological challenge where it's the solutions that are the issue. So, and that creates an obstacle for convincing them with the data, because psychologically they are already opposed to the solutions because they think that the solutions entail things like job losses or moving away from industries that they view as maybe something important to their family's background and economic survival. So it doesn't matter, is sort of what these studies are finding, how much you try and prove with science and data this is a problem, because it's the solutions that are viewed as threatening. So is there a way that in your work with the local communities and all these different examples of outreach you're speaking about, that you have thought about reframing the solutions? I know that Casey mentioned green jobs. And so that sounds like one possibility, but sort of reframing the solutions to these problems as being in the economic short-term interests of people, because it's so hard to try and convince them of the long-term ecological impacts, but sort of trying to get at the solution aversion by making the solutions themselves seem like they're not a threat. And that's for anyone. So if people have any thoughts about sort of how you frame the solutions to these problems.
Sure, I'll start, I guess. It's one of the discussions we have with our students when it comes to sustainability. And I think often people think, yes, there's going to be costs with that. But in many sustainable solutions, it's actually for a business can turn a profit. It's in many cases, when we look here at eventually with the city of Green Bay and reaching carbon neutrality, a big component of that is going to be improved efficiency. And that's another way of saying we're going to cut costs by becoming more efficient. So when we talk with our students, we're always saying, if you're looking at a sustainability project, look for opportunities to save costs, look for areas to reduce waste, which is immediately a way to save costs. But I do understand some of the paralysis that occurs when we talk about sustainability. I also think, and this is a conversation that I was listening to last night, and I do buy into, is this is a long-term problem. And in many cases, sustainability isn't going to be achieved in many of our lifetimes. So just thinking about, well, what can I do? I'm not going to see the end of this. I'm not going to see it achieved. I do think people think about that. All I would say is that as we continue towards that path, let's show and advertise and educate about all of the short-term victories where there are opportunities to save money and there are improvements, and focus and do our best to focus on those good issues.
Can I also answer that? Oh, sorry, Mary.
Oh, that's right.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, the very first rule of organizing is meeting people where they're at. And so I think that needs to be happening all the time. And so when I say that, I mean figuring out what a person cares about and what is their motivation behind why they do the things that they do, the actions that they take, and what they care about. Because the moment that you can engage someone on that and really figure out like what makes them tick, that's the moment when you can help them see the solution and how the solution would help them in the short term and the long term. And luckily, with the environment, it affects us in so many different ways, both very directly and indirectly. And so sometimes it's a matter of figuring out if a person has had an experience where, to John's point, maybe they really do care about cost savings, and then that's something that you want to engage them on. And it kind of depends too, like on what position they're in. If you're talking to an activist, like you might want to instead be talking about how local government or state government or federal government could be, putting forth policies or maybe even like revolving loan funds or grants that could help a resident pay for solar panels on their roof. Or if it's someone that Seth mentioned earlier who's been affected by flooding, talking about how if local government is going to be investing in green infrastructure or climate mitigation practices, that's going to be directly benefiting them in the very near future, and helping them to make sure that their home and their family's protected and that their well-being is protected. I think that there are still quite a few areas that the environmental movement has yet to form good relationships or long-lasting sustainable relationships, and labor is one of them. And I think you've especially seen that at the federal level with the Green New Deal and how many different labor unions have either been supportive or not supportive of it at all, because they can go back and tie it directly back to their jobs. And I think that's something that still needs to be figured out, and that it's really on the part of environmentalists to figure out how to reach, I guess, so to speak, across the aisle and meet people where they're at and really engage them on their values of labor and solidarity, and making sure that people can continue to have a living wage. And if they can't, not expecting them to suddenly learn a new industry or skill to try to survive, because eventually coal is not going to be an industry that people are going to be working in. Natural gas is eventually going to be eclipsed by solar and wind and other types of renewable energy. So we really have to have an honest conversation about how are we going to take care of those people who are in those industries right now, who through no fault of their own are going to find themselves potentially out of a job. And I don't think the answer is saying go learn to code or anything like that. It's really having a deep and honest conversation with them and letting them be the drivers of that conversation and figuring out what resources they can be provided. So I hope that answered the question.
Definitely. And we have some questions that are coming in, but does anyone else want to say anything on that?
Well, I think in the situation that FBRF is dealing with, that at first we realized that members of boards and planning commissions kind of fall into a group where in small towns it just becomes, kind of a rote thing to apply to grant a permit. And in our area, I think one of the things that we've done is help people in our town and in the city of Sheboygan realize that to improve their quality of life, whether that's the streets or taxes or the ability not to have the beaches closed so often because of the water impairment, that the council, the city councils have got to have people on them, as I said before, who have some knowledge of sustainability. And I think it's incumbent on the citizens to bring that to their governments, to say, hey, how about, if we put on, or if we help you put on an educational seminar on how a city of our size can become sustainable and how this will include our quality of life. So that's, I'm working on that, and I know a lot of people in my area are doing that.
Wonderful. I am going to get to some of the questions that have come in for you all. So one question that we have is about the green jobs idea. What do green jobs actually look like? Some examples I think they want.
There are a lot. I mean, right now, like 1 in 5 construction jobs are green jobs, jobs where people are working in sustainable building improvements, putting in things like new windows or doing other types of upgrades to conserve energy. But I mean, it's a pretty large and growing industry. You have a lot of people who are in the supply chain, and I think that you can count people in industries who are creating the materials for things like solar panels and like wind turbines and other types of infrastructure as being green jobs as well. And really anyone who has a stake in that supply chain.
Okay, we also have a question. What influenced you to become more aware of the environment? So perhaps, Seth, do you have any thoughts, sort of how you got into this field?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I think about it a lot. I grew up, like I said, in Eau Claire, and my family lived kind of where the city met the countryside. So as I grew up, I saw a lot of my favorite like berry patches and walking trails turn into like strip malls and outback steakhouses and stuff. So I think like that was like just a very, very immediate kind of exposure to, I guess, urban sprawl and then all the effects that go along with that. On my wall behind me here, there's a picture of me at Otter Creek by my house, and I just saw the creek get so dirty. I would swim in it, and then as I got older, I realized that probably wasn't a good idea. But I mean, I think at the end of the day, I was really lucky to have parents who took me outside. You know, we would go camping. I worked at a summer camp for years and years, and also kind of saw the connection between going outside and hiking and protecting our natural resources and the political process. I was definitely the outspoken fourth grader when Al Gore was robbed of that presidential election. And that was kind of my like first foray into kind of the intersection of like politics and the environment. And when I went to college, I just had so many great opportunities to get involved with community organizing to really protect what kind of made me who I was, and that was my experiences with the outdoors. So finding an organization like WCV, which is that nexus between politics and the environment, has been continually really grateful for that.
Mary, how did you become involved in the Friends of Black River Forest?
Well, when I look back on it and realize that this particular company, well, I originally am from out of state, and I had a home here for in the Black River area for I would say 9 or 10 years. And then this particular issue came up. And early on, around 2011, I made a comment to someone about, well, why would the board allow Kohler to do this? And they just looked at me and they said, what Herbie wants, Herbie gets. Well, being a social activist from the 60s, I have to admit I bristled. And I thought to myself, well, I wonder, when this golf course issue came up, I thought, I wonder if this is going to be fast-tracked. And I remember when the people in my neighborhood came here, their main concern was, and this was a question, do you think that because it's a large company, a job creator in our area, that permits will be skirted at the town, city, or state level? And now, I'd kind of like to laugh maniacally at that because this is what we've been doing for 6 years. We've been a watchdog of these permits and the different levels of government to make sure that the laws are followed. But I think I am adamant about everyone having equal access. I'm adamant about power and money not getting a seat at the table above everybody else. And these are, and our civil rights and our rights as global citizens are being challenged by this. And I also, just one more thing, the people that I met with from our town, they were from every background. They'd worked in factories, offices, they were professionals, they were from academia, and every one of them from this area had a tremendous respect for the natural world. And they were heartbroken when they realized what would be decimated. And they, I think, in this particular fight of mine, have made the biggest difference.
Thanks so much. So our last question, it looks like, for you all, is how you would encourage people, including UW Green Bay students, to get involved. So maybe we can start with John, since your work is with Green Bay.
Certainly. One of the things that the easiest thing they could do is reach out to the Environmental Management and Business Institute and reach out to me, and I'm more than welcome to, well, we'd have to, within the context of COVID-19, I'm more than willing to visit with them and discuss what opportunities might be out there to bring our students in, to give them a hand. Like I said, part of the certificate of sustainability is internships. So I'm constantly trying to promote internship opportunities, and I think there are opportunities for just about every kind of organization or community that we could involve our students in when it comes towards sustainability. So yeah, feel free to reach out to me.
Let's see, Seth or Casey, do you have any thoughts about the questioner, how they could get involved directly if they're a UW Green Bay student?
Yeah, I think they should set up a meeting with Casey because he's a great organizer. So I'll alley-oop it over to you.
Yeah, I actually just put a link in the chat if people want to take an action as soon as 5 minutes after this panel is done. I mentioned before that the clean energy resolution that we've been working on with the county, they inserted some troublesome language into it that would discourage privately or publicly owned wind energy in the entire county, which is a gross overstep of what they should be doing, especially if they made the goal of reaching 100% clean energy. They shouldn't be immediately discounting one type of it. And they're also incorrectly defining natural gas as clean energy, despite its carbon footprints being half that of coal and it containing other dangerous greenhouse gases like methane that can leak before it's even burned. So the most immediate action you could take is following the link that I just put in there and sending an email to your county supervisor. The other most immediate way you can get involved is to, I'll put my email in here, is reach out to me, set up a meeting, and help us finish this clean energy resolution here in Brown County. We're making phone calls from here until January 13th when the county board is going to be voting on this resolution. And I need help calling people. We have a list of over 2,000 people that need to be talked to and asked to take action with. So that's the most immediate thing. The other thing I would say is if you want to start your own campaign in another area like your hometown, or want to bolster something here in this area, to reach out to me as well, because those are, we can provide resources and advice to you on how to create a goal, how to put together a campaign team, and split up roles and responsibilities between people so you can be really effective, and can help you figure out who to find to be a local government champion for you, someone on like a city council or town board, or someone in a position of power who can be your champion and shepherd what you want to see accomplished through the process. And I'd say if that's something that you want to do, just get started on it, reach out to us and we can help, because the first step is just giving it a try. And from there, you'll figure it out, as so long as you're persistent.
Great, and Mary, we do have our Sheboygan campus, so are any students or people that might be listening from there, do you have any thoughts on how they could become involved?
Yes, we have worked to try to get some college students involved. I'm not sure. I don't know if the Sheboygan campus, do they have classes in sustainability?
Well, it's all UW Green Bay, so the requirement of sustainability is for all students.
Oh, okay. Yes, we could use interns. We could use people to help us disseminate information via media. And we have been looking for a lot of help over the years. So we are a nonprofit, and we do have resources for people who would like to help us. So I would be happy to have them get in contact with me if they would like to learn about, well, I would say some of the legal issues, you know, that are involved in our environmental rights, and also how to put their passion to good use.
Wonderful. And we just had a comment thanking you all so much for taking this time this evening. I learned so much from you all today as the commenter. So thank you. This concludes our panel this evening. I'd like to thank all the panelists again. This was a really wonderful, stimulating discussion. And thanks to the audience for some great questions tonight. So thank you all, and wish you all a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.